Leif called me a few years ago, and he's like, I realized something about you, Jocko. And I was like, oh, what's that? He goes, you're really, 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 really good at not doing things you don't want to do. And I was like, guilty. All day. Like if there's things, but for me, it's not just I don't want to do, it's things that don't, like I was saying to Brock, it's things that someone else can do. And it's also things that don't really move in the direction that I want to go in. Most of it in a business environment is I'm not going to fill out form alpha in triplicate when we can hire someone to do that. I don't need to do that. It takes me 40 minutes. There's no reason for me to do something that takes 40 minutes to fill out in triplicate. There's no reason for me to do that. Guess what? That initially got turned over to Jamie. And eventually Jamie was like, oh, I don't have time to do that. She hired Jen. Then Jen hired someone else. So what you end up with is people are stepping up and they're taking on. And what was I doing? I was sending more stuff down. Dude, Jamie's a freaking instructor at Echelon Front. You know what I'm saying? Think about what got turned down, what got pushed down, or what got turned over. It's like now, oh, there's a client that needs help with leadership in Nebraska. I'm not going. Jamie's going. And by the way, it's not just there's a whole team, but think about that. Think about how, when Jamie got here, I wouldn't have thought, when Jamie showed up, I was like, oh, hey, welcome, Jamie. Why don't you go to Nebraska and teach this company about leadership? I might have had a long-term vision of that, but that wasn't a thing. It was like, oh, well, why don't you start with this, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this. And things are getting turned over, and then she's turning them over, and so that's what we end up with. But the roles and responsibilities, they're there, and then, okay, what can you turn over? So, to Leif's point to me, like, oh, I'm good at not doing things I don't want to do. I'm also good at like, oh, I'm not going to use my energy on this thing. Not going to do it. I'm not going to use my will on this thing over here. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay focused on these particular things that I know is the ultimate goal that we're going for. So I would be looking like, okay, here's the things that we've got going on right now. There should be a relatively small number of things that only you can do. It should be a relatively small number of things. If it's a larger number of things, I would look at, okay, what are the low-hanging fruit here that I can say, yep, I can turn this over to Cody. I can turn this over to Leif. I can turn this over to Jamie. That doesn't mean I just go, hey, Cody, you take this now, I'm out. No, if Cody hasn't done this thing before, I'd be like, okay, Cody, here's the thing with this part of the process. Here's how you do it. Here's the lessons learned. Here's the protocols that I used. I'm going to shadow you as you do this for the first time, and then you call me immediately if you have any questions on the next one. You see what I'm saying? So you're turning things over to people. That's what you have to focus on as a leader. You know what? When Leif and I went through our workup to prepare to go on deployment, I was somewhat, maybe even at some points, very micromanaging of what Leif was doing to make sure that he understood how to do it. He was only a year into the team, 2 years into the teams. He didn't have a ton of experience. All right, dude, I know you haven't planned a direct action mission before. Cool, let me see you do it. Cool. Hey, think about this, think about that, think about the other thing. My goal was, I don't have to do it anymore. That's my goal. By the time we were on deployment, I didn't have to do it anymore. Probably by the time we were 3 months into workup, I'd be like, okay, dude, you got it. Between him and Seth and Tony, they knew what to do. Better than me. That's the goal. So I would be looking at things that you can actively turn over to someone on the team. That's another mistake that we make. Is we're like, well, I shouldn't be doing this, so I'm not going to. Or I shouldn't be doing this, someone else will do this. No. I shouldn't be doing this, so therefore Leif is going to do this now. Therefore Cody's going to do this now. This is Cody's responsibility. And I'm going to tell him. Not going to be a mystery. So that's what you need to do. You need to start looking at your plate and looking at what you can get off your plate and turn over to other people in an active way so that they can then take those things, take ownership of them, and you don't have to worry about them anymore. Or you have to worry about them very little. All right, what other questions do we have? Questions? Let's go.
So how do you get people to do stuff? Let's say you have something that you're passing down and they don't want to do it. It could be anything from, in our case, submittals or RFIs. And there are a lot of just
you say what, middles? What
submittals. So like on a product, like getting spec sheets and things put together, submitted it to an owner. But you have to learn this stuff to grow and to be a project manager. But it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Why should I have to do that? Because a lot of these kids are coming out of school and they're like, I want to be president, and they don't want to do the hard stuff, the stuff that we all had to do to get to that level. Yep. How do we motivate them and get them to understand the why and everything?
So going back to this roles and responsibility thing, imagine if you had a roles and responsibility chart that explained what the roles and responsibility was for each of these different, they want to be president, right? Each of these different levels. And actually the Navy was pretty good about this. They had something called the PQS system. The Teams wasn't great at it, but the regular Navy was pretty good at it. In order to be, and Leif might be able to help me out here, in order to be a watch standing officer, you had to have this qualification, you had to submit this thing, you had to use this instrument, you had to do these certain things, and you had to get them signed off. And once you get them signed off, that means you're eligible to sit in that chair or run that watch. So my guess is there's a lack of clarity for the guys that when you're like, hey, you need to do this paperwork, they're like, what do you need to do paperwork for? I don't want to do this. That doesn't make any sense because they don't understand their career path, right? They don't understand that there's an opportunity, and part of achieving that opportunity is to have a very clear career path. The SEAL Teams has done a great job now. It used to be when we were in, it was like you were getting promoted against the whole Navy, and it was like you were getting tested on things that no one knew anything about. Now it's like, if you want to get promoted in the SEAL Teams, you've got to do this, this, this. You got to have this job, got to have this knowledge, you're going to get tested on this thing. And if you do those things, you're going to be eligible for promotion, and when there's an opportunity, you'll get promoted. Before, it wasn't like that, and we'd have knuckleheads that would get promoted. But now it's much more, the career path is much more clear. So my guess would be, if I was, my first assessment of that is I would be like, hey, here's the career, what do you call one of the lowest working guy at your company? What do you call them? What are they, like a laborer? A laborer. Okay, so you have a laborer. What's next from a laborer? An operator usually. Okay, so those two things. It should be like, if you're a laborer, welcome to the company. Nice to meet you. You're coming on as a laborer. That's awesome. Here's the requirements of a laborer. Yeah, you got to know how to work a shovel, right? Yeah, you got to be able to carry this much weight. That's cool. But you say, hey, just so you know, to become an operator, which comes with this pay raise and these opportunities, here's the things that you need to get qualified on. Oh, and here's the paperwork that you need to start to learn about. And you go up and kind of make a very clear progression for them. They go, oh, I get it now. Actually, we've kind of done this at Echelon Front, because at Echelon Front, it was like, we're just bringing people on, and there's no real good career progression of like, oh, you start off, it's more clear now, but for a while we didn't have anything. Now it's like, oh, you're going to be an assistant instructor. Is there something before an assistant instructor? It's like an observer. Support instructor. Here's how many things you have to do. Here's the participations that you have to do. Here's the things that you have to do for the staff, and that's a support instructor. Then you go to assistant instructor. Okay, here's what happens. Here's what you're going to be responsible for. You got to be able to teach cover and move, simple, and prioritize and execute. Boom. And here's if you're going to become a lead instructor. So we had to create, just like you're going to have to create, a progression. So that way someone that's like, dude, I don't want to have to teach the ball exercise. And like, oh, that's part of the progression. So that means if you don't know how to do that, then you can't run a workshop. And if you can't come a workshop, then you're not a senior instructor. Because it goes instructor, then senior instructor, right?
Associate instructor or senior, yeah.
So, it's a little decentralized command happening. But, so creating a good, solid career progression actually helps us with all kinds of problems. Because it helps you, Brock, because then you can tell the people beneath you, like, hey, I need someone to run this. And you can start to look, these are the qualifications that need to happen. It helps you because now you're looking at all these different jobs and how you fit into that scheme. And it helps you because now you can look at people and say, oh, you don't want to do this paperwork? I guess you don't want to move to the next level. And you know what? You're going to have some people that don't want to move to the next level. And that's perfectly fine. I wish they let us do that in the SEAL Teams. In the SEAL Teams, you have to promote. They make you promote. And you can lag a little bit, but eventually they're going to promote you. And there's some guys that do not want to they like being a sniper. They like being a breacher. They like being a radioman. They like being a point man. They love that job. That's a freaking awesome job. They're into it. They don't want to get promoted, but we have to promote them. The British SAS, you don't have to do that. The British SAS, they're like, oh, you like being a point man? Yep. You want to keep being a point man? Yep. Keep being a point man. You'll be a point man for 20 years.